great memories. Teaching, the commitment that teachers had to their students, the commitment that the city had to their citizens. It was small then. When I grew up, the phone book was no bigger than this. I want the public to see it. Right. And obviously the annex of Nansemond became a bigger city, land surface-wise. But it was such a true town. And while we had obviously some imperfections, I still have good memories. My boyhood, my childhood, and I wanted to come back. It was a segregated school system, but the teachers were committed. I mean, they would not let you slack off. They became your parents, and so they got the best out of me. And they gave me a good foundation for going to University of Virginia. When I went to University of Virginia, I was fine. At the end of my year, I was the top on my floor, although some went to prep schools, and then I wanted to go to Harvard Medical School, at that time the best medical school in the country, and I was the only one to get in. And I give credit to the school system in Suffolk for giving me that foundation. I've been fortunate. If you look at people who have illnesses and that will shorten their lives, people who went maybe down the wrong road, I could have gone down that road. So I feel fortunate, and I feel that I did not do enough to open up doors. People did that for me. So while I did not participate in the civil rights movement because I was young, I said when they gave me the baton, I wasn't going to drop it. And so when I got the baton, I never dropped it. I knew that I had to run a strong race, so that motivated me, and it still motivates me. And in particular, surgeon, it was competitive. I felt that it was high stakes. I wanted to be able to make an impact. I knew that I wanted to be able to turn somebody's life around. That's why I knew I wanted to go into surgery, because it's high stakes and all that, and I felt I had the skills for it. When I mentioned a few minutes ago how this person delivered me, well, I had a football injury, and he said, I want my son to see you. This was O.W. Hoffler. William Hoffler was one of the old physicians here. His son was in Norfolk, had trained at Howard University, and was one of Charles Drew's last surgical residents. He came back home to be with his father. And he walked in the door, he was confident, he was tall, handsome, and I remember telling my mother I want to be just like him. And I knew then I wanted to be a surgeon. And we developed a good bond, and he was like a mentor, like a role model for me. Because it's high stakes. I mean, at the end of the day, when somebody has my specialty is general surgery, I wanted to be able to take care of most things in the body. So I operate anywhere from the neck to the abdomen, to extremities as far as tumors and all of that. So that's a general surgeon specialist. But my expertise, my specialty is acute care surgery, which I named. That includes trauma, critical care, and emergency general surgery. So you have a perforated ulcer, I'm the person. Perforated appendix. But I have also trauma and critical care. So you put all that together, that's called acute care surgery. So my specialty is general surgery. So electively I do a lot of things. But my specialty that people know me about worldwide is acute care surgery, because it's something that I name. Well, the greatest challenge facing this nation, not just me, facing this nation, even more so than the economy, possible military conflicts, is healthcare disparities. We are the wealthiest nation of all time, even if you compare us to the British Empire, a Roman Empire, and we have the worst disparities. We have people who can't get care. You have people that have a life expectancy that's 10 years less because of where they live, because they don't have access. Then that's unacceptable. You have 45,000 people dying each year because they don't have insurance. 45,000 in the wealthiest nation of all time. That's a major challenge, and we need to address that. I'm glad you asked that, because I just got funded a multi-million-dollar NIH grant, National Institute of Health, to look at defining the metrics. What are the early measurements of the healthcare disparities? So if you can define the metrics, you can develop a target intervention to prevent it. And that's why they funded it. And so we're going to start with that, look at the surgical communities, and then look at all the medical communities. We need to stop this, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And we're the only $1 trillion industry in America, healthcare, and we have some of the worst outcomes and the worst disparities as compared to Japan, New Zealand. I can go down the list. And something is wrong. And as I said before, we need a Steve Jobs in healthcare. something that can make our healthcare system more efficient. It's amazing you say, because I don't look at, see, I define success, I don't like to say success, because the metrics are honors and awards and all that. I just want it to be of value. At the end of the day, I tell my colleagues and I tell my trainees, be of value. Forget about the success, because there's different measures. You know, success could be you have a nice car, you belong to a country club, you got this award, that award. Those things are transient. I want to be of value. And if the fact that I've been of value to me has been a quote unquote success. That's my emphasis, even there, being of value. And you don't have to be formally trained to be of value. You don't have to have a Harvard background to be of value. Everybody should obviously pursue being of value, true value, to your family, to your church, to your community, to your organization. Forget about success, because success has so many definitions. You cannot be a leader in any field, with your field, my field, if you're not giving back. I don't care what anyone says, show me somebody who doesn't give back, you show me somebody who's not a leader. You have to give back to your community. That's part and parcel of all of this. We're fortunate. Anything could have happened. You could have gone a different route. I could have gone a different route. You know some of your colleagues, some of my colleagues. And so I'm so fortunate. That's why that motivates me every day. I tell them that we can't do this unless we complement each other. We all have things to bring to the table. Everybody has to bring something to the table. If not, we're not going to be able to achieve anything. Almost like a team. Everybody plays a role. The people who I've trained, who have done well, the surgeons who I've trained who have become accomplished surgeons, that's the greatest honor I can have. I would trade everything else. The greatest honor is being able to say that you impacted somebody's life and then they're accomplished, for me, surgeon. And on a personal level, seeing my daughter do well. I have a 14-year-old and she's doing super. And that to me is the greatest honor. Forget about it, I would trade her, I'll put everything in a U-Haul. But that is something you can obviously, is of value to me. I tell them they have to be disciplined, that this is a marathon, and there's no cutting corners. You're taking care of lives, you got to do it right, you have to make this, you can't go to every party, you can't go to every dance, you can't go to every play. You have to be disciplined and make sacrifices. If you're not going to do that, you're not going to be a good physician. A lot of people want your job, they want your title, my title, but they don't want the job. And I said, I want you to want my job. Forget about my title, I want you to want my job. Do what you have to do. Be in discipline, work ethic, and all of that. Some people today, they want the title. They want the championship. They want the Heisman. They don't realize what you have to do to get to that point. That's what I want them to concentrate on. I want them to have a desire to help others medically, and I want them to have a work ethic. You give me that, I can make something out of it. I don't care if they're not brilliant. I don't care if they're not technically all that strong. We can train them for that. But you can't really train somebody that innately doesn't have a work ethic, because they'll find ways to slack off. And you can't slack off when you're trying to take care of somebody's life and save somebody or help somebody. That's what you're trained to do. You're trained not to be distracted. You realize that this person needs they don't need you to be emotional. They don't need you to go through a meltdown. You need to focus. And if you can't do that, you're in the wrong field. And you see some people they're not cut out for surgery. You see that. And then you obviously channel them into a different career. Well, we could do better. And so there's always a challenge. Not necessarily, Suffolk does well, but you go across the country. I mean, I meant what I said. You have areas that don't have good health care systems, and people are suffering from that. They don't have access. And I meant what I said. You got 45,000 people dying a year just because they don't have insurance. I guess what is about access? Early intervention means a lot. If they pick up something early, but you got people coming into the hospital because they don't have insurance. They come in at the last moment with advanced disease, and you know that you can't do anything about that. That motivates me to try to change that system. Or early intervention. or early intervention. And for, again, with the bells and whistles we have in this country, the money that we have, and people are spending a fraction of what we're spending and they get full coverage, that makes no sense at all. I don't care how you look, I don't care what the politics might be, it makes no sense at all. You got a long list of countries that have universal coverage, and we're not on that list. Never been on that list. We have to. Our country is excellent. I love being an American. We do our best unfortunately, when we're in a crisis, and then we're in a crisis. We do our best. If you look historically, you put the United States up against the wall, we do our best, but I don't want to always do that. But right now we're in a crisis, and I think we're going to do our best. I always knew I was coming back. I knew when I left I was coming back, because I wanted to come back and provide a service to a community that developed me. And so that was my commitment. Knew I was coming back, but I wanted to come back fully trained. And they didn't want to do that in a malicious way. They're saying, you have all this talent. You've been to the best institutions in the world. Why are you going back to, they couldn't even say the name. You know, Norfolk or so. So they weren't putting it down. They were saying, you know, be on the New York stage. I didn't want that platform. I figured that I wanted to be of value, and I knew that I could be, quote unquote, successful anywhere. And I wanted to come back to my community. And I never regretted it. And I meant what I said, I burned the boats. When I came back, I burned the boats. I knew I wasn't going back. I'm looking forward to seeing people who I trained develop. I'm looking forward to seeing my daughter develop. And I'm not in the clubhouse yet. I'm on the back nine, but I'm not in the clubhouse yet. I'm still looking forward to doing what I do and impacting N equals the population there. You know, you can do it patient by patient, but I want to be able to do it a little bit more globally. And that's where the NIH grant comes in. I work out. I like reading. I like reading biographies. And I guess why don't you read fiction? I just don't have a lot of time, so I'd rather read something that I know is factual versus reading a fiction. Nothing against fiction, for those who look at it. But for me, if I have X amount of time, I want to read something. And I read biographies of, quote unquote, people who've done well, and you realize all the imperfections. And you realize the sacrifices they made and where they tripped up. It's amazing. I mean, for example, I was reading on Steve Jobs. He was given up for adoption by his parents, gave him up for adoption. He dropped out of school, but he had a desire to change the way we do information, and that everybody has a Steve Jobs type device. It's amazing. Didn't have, and I'm reading about Lyndon Johnson, had an impoverished background. He didn't like to own up to that. So it makes me realize no one has a perfect background, but you make it work by discipline and work ethic and having a vision. So I love reading biographies, and I work out. Those are the things I do. Because we have generations coming, not that they're bad, they're very smart. They want a quick fix. They need to know that you have to be in a marathon type mode, that this is, modular growth, that you'll have some good legs of the race, some legs of the race will be bad, and not be discouraged. Work ethic, discipline, commitment, sacrifice. That's what I tell them. My mother and father. My mother was a school teacher for 53 years in the Suffolk public school system. I wanted your audience to hear that. For 53 years, for 49 years, she taught in the segregated Suffolk public school system. She taught the grade that I skipped, the 3rd grade. And my father was a worker for the Norfolk Naval Shipyard for 30 years. He was a rigger. And so I knew about work, the importance of work ethic. I knew about education. And those things were obviously put in me, and they never left me.